This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and bet you guys thought I was never, ever going to review this phone. Yes, it is the OnePlus One. This is the amazing Android phone, not because it has something that every other Android phone doesn't have, but because it costs $299 and it has fairly flagship specs. Now, the interesting thing here is, well, it's actually been out for about 6 months. You still can't buy one. You still have to wait for an invitation, but how is it holding up now compared to flagships? We're going to find out. So here it is, finally, the OnePlus One. So many of you, probably thousands of you, have asked me to review this phone, and well, we're finally doing it. And I'll explain why a little bit later. But first, for those of you who don't know, OnePlus One, OnePlus is the company, this is the Model One. This is an unlocked, extremely affordable Android smartphone that, well, it competes with the flagships of 2014, say the HTC One M8, the Samsung Galaxy S5 in terms of specs and quality of build and all that sort of thing. But it costs only $299 for the 16 gig, which is available in Silk White, what we have here. And then there's the Sandstone Black model, which is 64 gigs for $349. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? Well, in a way, it is, because OnePlus has always operated on the invite system. Now, when they first did that in the first month when the phone came out, okay, and they're ramping up production, you figure, you know, sooner or later it's going to be available for anybody to get it. Here it is now 6 months later, and it's still hard to get the phone. You got to get an invite before you can buy it. That didn't leave me too thrilled with the company. OnePlus was founded by some higher-ups from Oppo, who make some higher-end smartphones in China. OnePlus is also based in Shenzhen, China, by the way. So there are theories that actually Oppo started OnePlus to try to give a little street cred, say, so they can create a new separate brand to say, look, you can get a phone out of Shenzhen that is high quality and all that sort of thing. So they're trying to create a little mystique around it, maybe, hence the invite system. I don't know what the reason is at this point, because there's nothing extraordinary in the phone that should make it hard to source. In fact, in light of that, we're actually reviewing the Chinese model. There are two models of this. There's one for China, and then there's one for the rest of the world. Both of these are unlocked phones. The one from China, which we got from lightinthebox.com, and they're actually a reputable retailer of all sorts of Asian phones, name brand phones like Lenovo, ZTE, not just those $100 phones you never heard of and you're kind of afraid of. Anyway, they actually carry this. This is the Chinese version. Notice how it doesn't say Cyanogen mod on the back. Chinese one comes with Color OS. The international version comes with Cyanogen mod. So what they do is they set it up and they flash it over to Cyanogen mod, figuring that, well, their business is mostly export, so people are going to be buying this from around the world. They want Cyanogen mod. So that's kind of cool. So it actually came with an unlocked bootloader and running the latest Cyanogen mod 11S on the phone. Now the thing is, this actually costs about $370, so that's obviously more than if you can get an invite to get one from the OnePlus website. That's the going rate actually in China if you buy it. The conversion rate from yuan to US dollars, that's just how it works. So you're not making too much money on it. But the interesting thing is, in China, there's no invite system required. You can just buy one of these. That's why they're more readily available with Chinese FD. LTE instead of US LTE. Now, for those of you who are in Europe, it has some of the most common LTE bands for Europe. Not every single one, but enough that it should work. But in the US, you're only going to get 3G HSPA plus at best. Now, we've tried this with both a T-Mobile and an AT&T SIM. We got HSPA plus on both of them, despite the specs really not listing all of T-Mobile's WCDMA bands and HSPA bands. So it works just fine there. So for those of you who are really desperate to get the phone, or if you're in Europe and you check out the specs and you say, hey, all the bands are covered, this is certainly a viable option if you can't get yourself an invite. Though the phone is inexpensive, it doesn't look inexpensive. This is a 5.5-inch full HD 1920 by 1080 IPS display here. Very nice display. That's 401 ppi pixel density. Plenty enough, really. 5.5 inches means it's a good-sized phone. It fills up the hand. It certainly fills up my hand. We have capacitive buttons on the back that you can control the backlighting on, or you can use soft buttons. We're going to talk about that. That's a whole lot to do with Cyanogen mod, which is a whole other discussion when it comes to the OnePlus One. But back to the hardware. Good-looking polycarbonate. It kind of reminds you of Nokia with that soft matte finish polycarbonate. The Sandstone Black also looks pretty cool. Got nice complex curves, all the things you don't expect from an inexpensive phone. Now, you can remove this back after you take the SIM card tray out, and boy, it is not easy to do. In fact, OnePlus, at first they were going to sell alternative backs, now they just sell covers instead. Much easier way to go. The SIM card slot is right here, and it's one of those eject with the pokey tool kind of things. And Light in the Box was nice enough to include 2 different size SIM card trays, so they included the micro SIM, which is standard, and a nano SIM card tray as well. Got our volume controls right here in contrasting black. Up top's the headphone jack. We have 3 mics around the body. There's one of them for noise canceling. Power button on this side. And dual bottom firing speakers over here. Now, they don't call them stereo. They just say dual bottom firing. So it could be dual mono. Who knows? It's kind of hard to tell with teeny little speakers that are this close together. And the usual micro USB port right here. And this does support USB on-the-go USB host. On the front, we have a 5 megapixel camera. And on the back, a 13 megapixel camera. That's a Sony Exmor sensor with a dual LED flash there. So good stuff so far, right, for a phone in this price. And it comes nicely packaged, too. We get the charger here. Everything looks kind of designery and interesting looking right there. And the main box here, we have the stylish spaghetti-style flat USB cable. If we slide this one open, again, nice-looking presentation for a phone in this price range. And that's where the phone sits right here. No kidding. Little guide. This is your USB, or rather your SIM card pokey tool right there. And we have the stylish USB cable. So, good stuff. That's what you get in the box. The story continues to be good inside, where we have the usual flagship, at least for 2014, 2.5 gigahertz Qualcomm Snapdragon 801 CPU. That's with Adreno 330 graphics, 3 gigs of RAM, and again, your choice of 16 or 32 gigs of storage. It has dual band Wi-Fi, 802.11ac, Bluetooth 4.0, NFC, and GPS with GLONASS inside. The battery, obviously, since this thing is just about impossible to open up, and even if you do take the back cover off, you'll see that you can see the battery, but you can't take it out. It's 3,100 milliamps, so that's also a very ample size battery. All sounds good, doesn't it? Well, here's the good and the bad of it, and let's just talk about Cyanogen mod for a bit. This is Android 4.4 KitKat Cyanogen mod version. For those of you who are not big fans of XDA developers and don't get into Flash and custom ROMs and all that sort of thing, Cyanogen was real popular on XDA developers for making better ROMs than the manufacturer made for various devices, and there's Cyanogen mod for whole lots of phones out there. So OnePlus hired them up to actually make their own custom version of Android for the OnePlus, which is very cool. But if you've been following the news, they've had a little falling out because in India, Cyanogen mods, well, they're going to be on a competitor's device instead, so no more for the OnePlus in India. And it looks like from what OnePlus has been saying is that they're going to roll their own ROM in the future, so it may not be Cyanogen mods. So I hesitate to cover how great it actually is here in a lot of ways, but we will. And of course, those of you who are more technical, more geeky, you can always find or build a Cyanogen mod in the future that you can put on this. But so far, the alpha of Lollipop Android 5 has been, well, OnePlus's own instead. So what's all the talk about? This is one of the alternative themes called Hollow. It's more like the standard Android theme. I personally don't like the default theme that this comes with the giant square icons and stuff like that. That's easily remedied because Cyanogen mod is a very popular thing. So there's like a theme showcase right here. So you can choose from a whole lot of different looks, including ones that kind of remind you of HTC or Samsung, if that's how you roll right there. A lot of nice and interesting looks. And you can pick and choose if you just want part of the theme, if you just want the icons, if you just want the wallpapers. There's even one that mimics Windows 8, isn't it? Pretty funky, huh? Nice there. Otherwise, it's fairly standard looking Android and very optimized for speed. It's responsive enough. And the settings here are just the most amazing things. If you're not used to using something like Cyanogen mod, you can change just about everything on this. This stuff here is normal. Themes, it takes you to, well, what I was showing you. So the status bar. Signal style, brightness control, whether or not it's actually on there, the clock style. You can turn on double tap to sleep, double tap to wake from sleep. Say you're one of those people that absolutely hates capacitive buttons on the bottom. Well, you can actually enable on-screen nav buttons right there if you want instead. Of course, you're going to lose a little screen real estate if you do that. There's actually left-handed options here. Not that Android is particularly a right-handed centric interface, but for things like the camera, well, it's kind of nice to actually have the shutter button be on the left instead of on the right-hand side, or the controls, that sort of thing. It's very nice. It really, this lets you make Android be just whatever you want it to be. So that's the nice thing about Cyanogen Mod, along with the speed. No bloat on this, just good stuff. Again, how long we're going to get to keep that? Well, if you want new OS versions and all that, well, that's kind of the problem. And it's one of the several kind of problems with OnePlus as a company, their bizarre limited availability that's just gone on forever, at least for the international version. Again, not the Chinese version. There's odd marketing techniques where they encourage people to destroy phones in order to be able to buy a OnePlus. That was not cool either. And now they fall out with Cyanogen. So they're a good international presence at this point. I believe that they believe in what they're doing. They're not some shady little no-name company out there, but I don't exactly want you to think that they're LG or Apple or Samsung or anything like that. They are a company still in flux. Doesn't mean the hardware isn't good. They're not known for the world's greatest support either, but they do have support, so don't worry about it. And if the device dies and all that sort of thing, you can send it back and get a replacement if it has a hardware failure, all that sort of thing. In terms of call quality, actually, again, this is a Chinese variant, but it works just fine here in the United States. Really good call quality, extremely loud for both incoming and outgoing voice. In terms of software, most everything you see here that isn't stock, I put on. I rooted it, I put on Super SU and stuff like that. Other than that, you get the full Google Play treatments, fully Google sanctions. You got Play Music, Play Books, the Play Store, all that sort of stuff is on here. You get a Torch application, and you get a custom camera application. You get a file manager as well. And of course, I put BusyBox on there for doing some geeky things with it. We've got audio control, by the way, all sorts of control over audio on this too with Cyanogen Mod, which is nice. But let's take a look at the camera next. So here's our giant 5.5-inch viewfinder, and I have set it up to be left-handed because I am left-handed. That's why the buttons are on that side. If you don't want them there, you don't have to have them there. Don't worry. Flash control right here, swapping between the 5-megapixel front camera, which, as you might guess, does a pretty good job. And settings, all sorts of nice settings here. You got your burst mode, your quality, shutter speed, touch focus duration. And if we swipe on, there's your video control all the way up to 4K video. We have slow motion recording on here as well, which video codec we're using. And even more options, including my favorite left-handed option, which I'll now uncheck so you can see what that's like. And there we go, the buttons are on this side. How about focus, touch to focus speed? It's pretty good. When the phone first came out, it was notorious for being a little slow to focus. They've remedied that. It's quick enough now. And how does it do? It does a pretty good job. It's a 13-megapixel camera, like I said. It's about up there with the LG G2, which was a no-slouch camera, actually. Is it the best that you can get in the way of a camera? No, I'd say the Samsung Galaxy S5, for example, still beats it in terms of color saturation and sharpness. This one can still be a little soft, but for $299, hey, it's really good for $299.
This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and this is the Sony Xperia Z3. Finally comes to the United States via T-Mobile. Thank goodness.
Not bad, right? Well, the speakers were set at about 80% volume. So again, early on, this had some issues with the volume not being loud enough. They've obviously addressed that. Volume is good on now, very sharp and clear. I was streaming that over 3G HSBA Plus on AT&T. I'm using an AT&T SIM in this right now. Looks great as well. Again, that 1080p screen of 5.5 inches is plenty enough. Good color saturation. Gets the job done. 5.5 inches also great for viewing websites. That's our full desktop mobiletechreview.com website right there. Everything looks nice. It is easy to see, you can pinch, you can zoom, all the usual things there. That's Chrome, by the way. So how does it do on benchmarks? Well, it does like pretty much every other Snapdragon 801 Android phone on the market. 23,958 for quadrant. 3D Mark, 18,370. As you might guess, yeah, it's fine for games. It's good for games. It's not the very fastest. It's not a Snapdragon 805, but it's pretty fast. And believe me, it's good for Asphalt 8 and your usual set of more demanding Android games. Sun Spider, not a super duper impressive number there, 1135, where lower numbers are better, and the fastest phones get somewhere between 400 and 600 for a score. Still, you're probably never going to notice that, honestly. In terms of page rendering speed, it's quite fast enough. Geekbench 3, single core, 963, multi-core, 2245. So that's the OnePlus One, and the hardware is really holding up well. Again, like I said, about 6 months ago is when you first might have been lucky enough to actually get to order one of these. And here it is, the beginning of 2015 now, and it's still looking very good for the price. The only thing that has me concerned is what's going to be going on with the operating system. Will we have Cyanogen mod? Will we have some other OS? How quick will those OS updates be? I don't really know. If you're more of a power user and you can pick and choose your ROMs anyway, it's not going to matter as much to you. But as a super affordable but flagshipy phone for the masses, for you folks who are not tinkerers, i.e. the masses, those things are of some concern. But then again, a lot of people will be just happy to roll with Android 4.4 KitKat if you're just looking for a cheap phone that has real nice specs, a real nice screen, and it's fast. You get those here. That's the OnePlus One. So that's the OnePlus One. It is still, what can I say? It's the best $299 full retail smartphone that you can't buy, at least not very easily. That hasn't changed. It probably never will. Maybe by the time the OnePlus 2 comes out, I don't know. Anyway, interesting idea here, buying the Chinese version of the phone because it's very readily available. The one thing you're going to lose in the US is LTE, like I said, but still a lot of bang for the buck. And if you can get an invite for the LTE version here in the US, well, it's a good phone. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit our website for the full written review, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.